You're listening to Funny Peculiar with Jeff Downs.
Welcome to another episode of Funny Peculiar Podcast. I won't say too much because I do all the intro when I start interviewing, but this week is a very special guest. And by the way, thanks for downloading, thanks for sharing, keep listening. As always, I've got great guests coming along. This one is no exception, and she's an old friend from London. It's Naomi Paxton. She's a character comedian, researcher, does loads. And let me just give you a shout out. So do follow her. She's got a website, www.naomipaxton.co.uk, and you can follow her on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So Naomi, it's Naomi Paxton. So just put that in and you'll find Naomi Paxton. So listen, without further ado, let's get on with the interview, and we'll go right over because it's wonderful. And she does, apart from comedy, she does lots of stuff with the suffragette movement with her writings, and she's been in Parliament. So many stories. You've got to listen. Keep listening. And here we go with the wonderful Naomi Paxton. Welcome to another Funny Peculiar podcast. And this week is an old friend. And we be careful when we use the word old, because we were talking about the new Hackney Empire, which I'm talking this week to Naomi Paxton. Let's say hello to Naomi.
Hello.
How are you doing? All right.
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Now, I was just recapping there. You have just won. Now, you do a character comedian. You do the wonderful Ada Camp. And I'm going to
wonderful Ada Camp,
You're going to tell me all about her in a minute. Now, you've just won as her the new act of the Comedian of the Year, Hackney Empire. That's right, isn't it?
So it's the new Act of the Year show, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Congratulations. That's absolutely fantastic. And also, you've managed to make it into the Old Comedian of the Year competition.
I'm in the final.
You're in the final.
Ada's in the final.
Ada's in the final. And we were just chatting. So, what's the old? How old do you have to be to qualify to get in there?
Well, shockingly, it's 35 or over, which is terrifying.
This is terrible. That's millennials for you. They don't know they're born these. They don't know they're born these days, and they
technically I might qualify for the geriatric comedian of the year under those terms. Terrifying.
That's terrifying, isn't it? So. And I've known you from years ago because we both worked with Bob Simpfield, and I'm hoping when I ask you at the end, perhaps I'll get Bob onto the show. But Bob was a radio presenter, writer who did lots of sketches for radio, and we did sketches for him, and that's how we met. And you do lots of other stuff as well, and we'll go through all of that. Such a talented lady, but we were just chatting as well. Ada Camp, and you're going to tell me all about her in a minute. But I was there at probably the very first gig of the inception of Ada Camp.
It's just amazing.
And there I was watching. I knew it. I knew there was something. And that was the lovely Rita, wasn't it? Yeah,
so that was a double act, a magic double act called Malcolm Marvell, Master of Mystery, and the lovely Rita.
That's it.
And I was the lovely Rita. And Ada has kind of come out of that. She's actually much more different now, but it came out of, I first got involved in that whole genre really through that double act.
And so lovely Rita she started off as a magician's assistant effectively. Is that right? But where's that grown, and what's Ada now? Is Ada this sort of very showy, boisterous lady? What's the act about?
Well, she's kind of veered. So part of my tagline used to be kind of comedy, magic, and shouting. But now I think, I would say she's a variety act, actually. Okay. She's a variety act. So it's comedy, variety, and cabaret. There is a bit of magic in there as well. But mostly it's comedy, variety, and silliness. So,
Wonderful. And where do you think, and your inspirations for Ada, because I've seen, and again, now you've got an Instagram account, so for people listening, let's give a shout out to the Instagram account, because this is a new thing I've put in, so while they're listening, they can look at your pictures. So what are you on Instagram, if you can?
That's a very good question. I think I am Naomi.Paxton. I think I am on Instagram. I think you
are, yeah. So follow Naomi on Instagram. I'll put it all in the iTunes bio details. I'm going to say it at the end, so don't worry, I'm going to to give all the information out. And so Ada has these wonderful outfits, these sort of headdresses, and this quite sort of out there makeup. So how did the makeup sort of come about? Tell us about that.
I sort of wish I could remember that. I think that was when I first started doing the Lovely Rita, and I just kind of wanted to make her look fantastical. And I am a huge fan. Okay, so I'm a huge fan of kind of old time music hall. When I was a teenager, I used to be a member of a junior member of the Players Club, which was at the Players Theatre in Charing Cross. And I'm a theatre historian. I love theatre history. So I think there's something around kind of masks and a kind of heightened, playful, sort of pantomime-y face that I really enjoy. I just love making myself look different. So I think I would say that Ada kind of paints for, the upper circle in the Palladium, but she just happens to be above a pub in Camden, Right. But if necessary, she could be visible from the upper circle. So it's really just trying to create something that feels and looks very theatrical and quite extra. What I didn't realise really, which is I realise more and more now, is it kind of is more revealing than covering up. At the time it felt like it was covering up, but actually the playfulness of it is part of the silliness of the act, I think.
And so that's interesting you were saying about the theatre history, because a lot of like you were saying about the makeup's got to be big and bold, and some of the gestures and the acting. And back then, in the history of theatre, that was purposeful, wasn't it? Because so people could see. Is that right? You could see the characters and actors on stage.
Yeah, I mean, it comes a lot more in the kind of. In terms of straight theatre, it comes a lot more in the sort of mid 20th century and onwards. But I suppose we'd be thinking about pantomime and variety, so a kind of heightened character from pantomime or variety, or kind of commedia dell'arte, something that's a very clear character, rather than Ada Camp's not playing, I don't know, Gertrude from Hamlet or anything.
Right.
She's playing a sort of a fantastical, playful. Interactive, clownish sort of person. So it kind of harks back to a lot of that, really, rather than kind of straight stage makeup, because I'm not trying to contour her to make her look old or anything particular. Yeah.
And how does she go down with audiences? Because again, character comedy, especially in the stand-up world, it's very rare to see character comedians, and I've seen that as well when doing my characters. So when you've done Ada, I mean, how did it go down with the Hackney final and you won? I mean, it's breath of fresh air. People are like, what's this? Because stand-up must just get boring, because that's all it is.
It's interesting, and I've always, during the heats for that, and just like the heats for the old comedian of the year, you do just feel like such an attention-seeking idiot, because you're there in full slap and wigs and stuff, and you're like, everyone else is just kind of in a suit or something, or have changed their shoes, and that's it. But I think there's something refreshing about her, and I think as I've got more confident with her. I mean, I'm aware that it might not be what all audiences are waiting for, and if there's just a bill of straight stand-ups and then you have the character act, that might look quite odd. But she's very interactive, and I'm not pretending to be from the 19th century or anything. Like, she's very now. She's got a Twitter account and a Facebook account, and she talks about that. So there's the artifice is there, but it's also kind of worn on her sleeve, really. So I just kind of go for it, and it puzzles audiences sometimes. Yeah. But she's very well-meaning and very warm. And I think mostly, if I'm lucky, the path of least resistance is just to go with it. So I've been very lucky that that they have, for the most part, even on a straight stand-up bill. I just kind of go, hey, let's just play,
And I've been there as well, and with characters sometimes, because you're locked into that's the act, and stand-up you can sort of shift and slide around the script. You can't with characters. So have you had a few moments where it's just sort of what's your worst gig so far? Have you had a few of those?
I had a strange one where I've been booked. I've been booked to perform at a radical feminist event, and that was an AGM that was being held at Amnesty International, and they just watched a film about FGM, I think, and sex trafficking. This was years ago, just when Ada was starting, and I was performing in some feminist cabaret then. And it was a little taster, and I remember looking in through the screening door, and they were showing this obviously amazing film about FGM, and I was there in makeup and wigs and heels and thinking, oh my God, like now this, So I decided I kind of thought that I might die on my arse, and I thought, well, if I die on my arse, I want to go down like knowing why I've gone down, not puzzled. So I got Ada to kind of pretend that it was a hen party, which was like the most inappropriate thing she could have done in the circumstances. Like, who's the bride? How wonderful, and be very enthusiastic about this and get people up and do silly things. And the audience went with it. I think they were being very kind to me, but it felt very odd. And then a couple of years later, somebody offered me a gig, an amazing gig actually, off the back of that. And she said, "Oh, I was in that room and I remember rolling in the aisles." I don't remember anyone rolling in the aisles. I remember them tolerating me, but because they were lovely women. but actually, it seemed to have gone well. So I think it was the kind of, I just thought, well, let's just go for it. And I'm not going to try and struggle through. I'm going to try and kind of tackle this head on and do something that says, I'm aware that this is really incongruous. And yeah, sometimes it can be a bit, we all have sort of funny gigs sometimes, but I don't think I've properly died on my, she says, touching the nearest bit of wood. I don't think I've properly died on my arse for years.
But you made it. Well, you made it through, and in those situations, and it's so awkward when that happens. But it sounds like you've just got to go with it, and it's sort of what can't hurt you makes you stronger. So it's like
yeah, and I think like late night gigs, or last year in Edinburgh, I compared Ada compared a cabaret night every night, a variety cabaret night, and just kind of coming on and doing bits and bobs and engaging with a new audience every night who weren't necessarily there to see me. Just that kind of thing is really, really helpful, I think, in just seizing the bull by the horns. And certainly nowadays, now I get on quicker, and I think I go to them and I less expect them to come to me as I've got confidence.
And does she go down with a festival audience? Does she go down better there than, say, a more mainstream sort of in a regular club, or it's you do you adjust the character accordingly, or you just go for it?
I just go for it. I'm always surprised. I mean, our postman, who was delivering me some magic, was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I did a fundraiser recently for the Women's Equality Party, and he brought his wife to the Women's Equality Party gig and loved it, and now wants to come and see Ada at other things. And some guy saw me do a little talk and then came to see Ada. So I never know what's going to hit the spot. And when I had flyers in Edinburgh, I was saying to them, I want you to go for people who look like they definitely won't enjoy this. Because what my audience said to me, people who look quite miserable and middle-aged, and then they howl and giggle like all the way through and really, really giggle and find it silly. So I think if you can poke the funny bone or the silly bone of an audience, wherever they are, and they're playing, then that's absolutely fine. I mean, at the festival, they're more up for it, potentially, because they deliberately come to see you. But I approach it with good energy.
That's great. I love the fact about the postman, because technically now he's a fan. He's become like a legal stalker because he knows where I live. He knows where you live, but legally he can pop through mail. So it's like, but there you go. So what's the sort of? Do you get fans? Obviously, you've got a postman now as your fan. Do you get people coming up to you and going, "Oh, that was"? What's your sort of weirdest experience of a super fan or someone coming up to you? Can you remember?
Wow. No, I've had lots of lovely people in Edinburgh who've come back and seen the show again a few times, or come back and seen Ada again, which is nice. My weirdest ones have been when Ada's fortune telling. I do comedy fortune telling for events and stuff, and I've had some strange encounters, fortune telling encounters, because I make it very clear that it's all just nonsense and I'm not channeling anything.
So you're just to lay this, just to sort of set the scene out for people. So you're using a crystal ball or tarot cards?
No. I've made my own cards of pictures of chickens on them. I've got those, and I've got a bag of hay. So instead of faith healing, she does hay feeling. And so I make it as desperately silly as possible in order that it doesn't look like some big double bluff. I'm like, I cannot do anything. But people take it as like a double bluff. Like I'm being so silly that must mean. And I've had some odd and curious encounters, including requests, would I come to people's houses to do private readings? For goodness sake.
Well, you should, with your chicken cards, and then and you don't actually summon up the devil, but you summon up a KFC or something like that.
It's the strangest thing.
Oh, you should really. So people have tried to book you for an actual reading.
Private readings, yeah.
That's brilliant. That's funny. And I want to say, and we should say as well that, and with the new act. Comedian of the Year, the Hackney one, which is, and it's big in London, it's massive. I think that's the biggest competition, isn't it? Now you are the third woman to win this, and you're treading in the footsteps of Linda Smith and Ronnie Ancona. So
I know.
congratulations again. I can't believe
Thank
that.
you.
I can't.
I know.
But
It's bonkers, isn't it?
that's fantastic. So
Thank you.
and how do you keep Ada fresh as well? How do you keep that act sort of new? How do you sort of keep her on her toes?
I love writing for her. I find her very silly, and I enjoy writing for her. So, like, I've got a gig this week that I'm going to try and cobble some bits and then write some new bits of. And I'm doing some more and more comparing as her. There's this brilliant little club that's opened up in South East London called the Poodle Club in Sydenham. It's brilliant.
Oh,
and so
fantastic.
Ada's emceeing this weekend, actually, and then next weekend, and then a few other times. So I think I just try little bits, play with little bits, and constantly try and write, kind of deal. I mean, she's not kind of political per se, but I'm always wanting to tell stories about the kind of her crazy past or strange encounters she's had, and and you can use real encounters to kind of as the building blocks for that. So, but I love writing for her.
And does she? And do you do the act? The act is totally you on your own, but do you have guests that you interact with other characters, or it's just a solo act?
It's a solo act. She has not familiars, I wouldn't say. She has sort of friends with her. So at the moment I'm doing a lot with the psychic duck. So she has a psychic duck,
right?
That she uses a lot on stage, mostly to do card tricks with. And she's had various other kind of strange imaginary friends that have manifested in the shape of some rather odd props in the past. But magic being magic, I tend to get people up from the audience or use the audience. Although I'm trying to move away from that now and kind of do more silly storytelling, which is more appropriate for kind of a straight stand-up night than constantly having to get audience members up. So I'm trying to diversify that and really eke out the storytelling more, which is quite fun as well.
And when you're doing the new stuff, do you try and push yourself all the time to do the new material? Is that quite a scary feeling when you do sort of step outside that comfort zone?
Yeah, I think so. But it's exciting. I want her to move forward, and I don't want to get sick of it. And you're always playing with the rhythm. It's just, you know what it's like. It's a kind of trying to make it a shit sandwich. The new thing, try do an old thing, works, and try a new thing, then do an old thing again, and just kind of play with those rhythms. Which is why something like Edinburgh is really good, because of course you can find out really quickly what works, or the rhythm of how to say
Sure, because it's quite experimental, Edinburgh, which is great for a lot of reasons, that you can just spread your wings, can't you?
It's just the repetition, I think. You just go, well, that doesn't work, I can instantly try that again, tomorrow or tonight. I think I constantly try and write new stuff for her. I would say so. And also quite a lot of resurrecting. I've been doing her for a while now, and I've got sort of a whole note thing with lots of random phrases on it. And every so often I'll just look through that and try and piece together a few things, like some sort of mad word disassociation game, and go, what on earth was that?
Do you do it? Yes, because you write things down, and you go, what does that mean? And it was what does that? I know. How does that connect? And so Ada's one part, but you do a lot of, and we're chatting earlier, and as I said, I've known you from London years ago, and through a sort of colleague, and I'd seen obviously the lovely Rita, and this has blossomed into Ava. But you had worked with, and because you said you've studied theatre history as well. And you've done lots involved in stage, but you also worked with puppets as well, didn't you? And this interests me, because this was quite a project that you undertook, and it was. You tell me about it, because it was, as I remember, it was working with children with problems or learning difficulties, but the puppets helped to engage with them. Is that right?
Yeah, so it was a project in Romania, and I was there for every summer 5 years, for 5 years before they joined the EU, so in the kind of mid-noughties. So I was working in orphanages, state-run Romanian orphanages that mostly had either non-verbal or sort of autistic spectrum or institutionalized young people, mostly young men in them. And I was supposed to be there doing kind of drama workshops, and very quickly realised that my repertoire of middle-class Surrey-based drama games was not going to cut it, and I really started getting interested in communicating and thinking about storytelling, and thinking about they didn't have very much, and a lot of the things that they had would be taken away, so I didn't want to take gifts and then for them to disappear. I wanted the work that we did, the communication that we did, to be actually physically with them and about them. So developed over those 5 years the ways of working with puppets that were non-verbal, but that could allow the people to, the young men to express themselves and sort of be playful in a relatively safe environment of the I suppose of the workshop room or the teaching room we're in that we were in, whereas the wider environment of the orphanage was often very, very unsafe for them. So I found it fascinating. I found I would end up doing a lot of research about neuroscience and language and noise and sound, and lots of research into puppetry. And I was working with a prop maker and with puppeteers, and that ended up creating a whole range of puppets that were very easy to operate, but that also were very practical. So made of coloured latex, they didn't have particularly eyes. They could be, trodden on or all that kind of stuff.
This was interesting and I saw the pictures, and it was incredible. And I remember the time when you were doing it, and I just thought, wow, this is amazing. And I think what was struck me in what you described there in the puppets was there were no, because of the children's different learning abilities, they weren't too many features on the puppets, because it let the child then imagine for themselves. Just talk us through, say, one of the puppets that you would work with.
Sure. So say we had I don't know if your listeners were a kind of bunraku style. So you can have a multiple person operated or like a rod puppet system. So basically, I learned over the years I was there that not to try and pull the wool over their eyes or not to make anything look too special, because it would get smashed. So it was just really bold and bald and saying to them, this is what it is. It's nothing really. It's a puppet. It only comes alive in your hands. It only comes alive in our hands. And it doesn't mean anything unless we are with it. And so they were a really important part of that process. So the three kind of main rod puppets we had all had different face and head shapes, but they had kind of indentations where the eyes would be, but no eyes particularly, because a lot of the children didn't make eye contact or didn't want to make eye contact. Very prominent noses, so that we knew which direction they were facing in. And no particular mouth area, so kind of a nose and a chin, a face shape, but no mouth area. So they were not talking puppets. They were puppets that could look and could gesture and could be imaginative and playful. And then they were attached to a wooden rod with a kind of a cross shape, and then some arms that were made from rope that was glued on, and then articulated with rods. So they were very simple. But they're actually fantastically expressive, and a combination of those rod puppets with, say, very simple bird puppets or butterfly puppets that were all about taking the time and feeling the kind of nuances of movement, rather than sort of being very clever and articulating lots of different things all at once. Actually made some really exciting and meaningful interactions. And we only stopped going when Romania joined the EU. The orphanages were shut down, so I went back immediately the year after. But because I was basically an actor at the time, and even though it wasn't expensive being there, it was very expensive not being in London, not working. And so it was basically myself and then a medical student that was sort of running it. Sure. And petered out in the end. But it's very much stayed with me. And I still have all my puppets, and I think about it a lot. So I'd love to revisit that one day.
Yeah, I think you should. It was incredible, and I wanted to ask as well, when you were interacting with the children, would it be like a one-on-one situation, or the kids were to be drawn towards the puppet once you brought the puppet alive? Is that how it sort of worked? It was
mostly group work, because we were within an organisation. Mostly group work, I would say, and a very controlled introduction of the puppets based on making sure the children felt comfortable and felt that it wasn't overwhelming for them, because having not much stimulation, having a lot of people coming in doing things is a huge amount of stimulation.
Of course.
And so it was about really being sensitive to their needs and taking things slowly and building up steps incrementally, and so giving them control over the process rather than us saying, look, we've brought this, play with it.
Sure. And not to overwhelm, and to allow them to feel how they wanted to do it.
Yeah, to give them a sense of ownership, really, and say, we're one of the things. I mean, we were in orphanages all over Romania, but when you're up in the kind of near Transylvania in the mountains, there's all the things, the reference points that you might use, even with, say, people, non-verbal participants here, you might say, well, let's imagine we're by the sea or a roller coaster or we're in a car or something. I mean, and these kids were pretty much confined to this very rural orphanage. So we literally had our bodies in common, and we had birds and rain and a dog in common. But there were no cultural reference points that we had in common that were not literally our physicalities. And so it was really a stripping down of that and looking at what we had in common and how we could be playful through mostly our body movements, our eye contact, and a kind of genuine sense of wanting to engage and communicate, which makes it all sound very worthy, but I loved it to bits.
No,
it was fun.
I remember when you used to come back and you tell me about it, and I just thought it was stunning. So is there any footage on YouTube, any clips at all that if people wanted to go and see, or is it a bit sort of like it was so long ago?
It was kind of before YouTube.
Oh, right, yes.
We do have some clips, actually. I'm just going to look up and see if the website... We started a charity. I'm just going to look it up now. What? Looking up.
Live on the... Let's do it. This is a new podcast experience.
Okay, so if you look up... It does exist. If you look up With Feeling, so withfeeling.org.uk, there's our kind of embryonic website with... the charity stuff that we set up and the little film that we made.
Brilliant.
So that people can see a little bit about that, but it hasn't been updated for a long time.
That's fine. I just think people will be interested to look at it. That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And also, and again, more strings to your bow here. And again, I'll watch your on your Facebook page, and so much stuff going on that you do. Now you worked, and you're heavily involved with sort of the suffrage movement, and with the and so you've written suffrage plays, and then you've got books out. So tell us about that. But also, I'm really interested to know, you worked in the Parliament, didn't you? You had this sort of exhibition that you put on, and this was in the Houses of Parliament. Was that right?
Yeah. So basically, 2008, which is kind of the year I first sort of did Ada as a separate beast, I first found out, so it's 10 years this year, I first found out about suffrage plays, that there was like a professional theatre wing of the suffrage movement, and I was mesmerised. I was in a play in the West End at the time, and I found this out, and I never did the suffragettes at school. I did the Tudors, and then I changed schools and did the Tudors again. So I didn't know anything about suffragettes, and I just loved the fact that there was professional theatre. And I started to get involved with that, and then kind of doing readings and things. And then people kept saying to me, "Are you going to write a play?" And I was like, "No, I'm not really a playwright." So eventually I applied to do a PhD at University of Manchester. And I got accepted, had to start part-time because I didn't have any funding. And then I got some funding from Equity, the Actors Union, because I've been an actor for over 10 years. So they paid some of my fees, and the rest of the time I just worked. So I did the PhD all about the professional theatre wing of the suffrage movement. And that finished in 2015. And since then, I've kind of been in this funny space of being a performer that's researching performers and theatre, but now kind of being in a more academic space, but being somebody who's very happy to talk to people and all that stuff. So I did a book of plays in 2013 because people kept saying, "Where can I get these plays?" So I did a book of those called the Methuen Drama Book of Suffrage Plays.
Okay.
And then finished the PhD in 2015, and this year, so this month, it's just come out kind of the book of the whole thing, the book of the PhD, which is called Stage Rights. So that's come out with Manchester University Press, and that's kind of all of my research. And then I've got another book of suffrage plays coming out in a couple of months' time with Bloomsbury again. So the Methuen Drama Book of Suffrage Plays 2. Well, it's not called 2. It's called Taking the Stage or something. But for the past year, I've been working in Parliament on a project about the suffrage movement in World War One, which is involved doing workshops and organising talks and panels, and then putting together an exhibition for the House of Parliament.
Fantastic.
So it's just been extraordinary. The kind of the different, the way these things have gone, and kind of following your nose and finding something. And to do the PhD was just amazing, and to have that now is fantastic. So I don't quite know what happens next, but
so you're a doctor then? Am I?
I'm a doctor.
I'm bowing now down.
Good.
And dothing my cap, doctor. Now, well, congratulations. That's and sorry, I'm after salacious gossip now. Come on, you're in the Houses of Parliament. So when you were doing this exhibition, did MPs engage? I did see some pictures, and there were sort of MPs coming to chat to you about it. Is that right?
Yeah. Did some MP. I mean, I will say this, I was with all the cool people, like the kind of outlook and engagement,
Sure.
outreach people, the funky public engagement people. So I wasn't actually working with any parliamentarians directly.
Sure.
So I get to kind of step away, from that. And anybody I was working with who's a parliamentarian, it was, for an event, and it was all very lovely and smiley.
Did you see any of the big names walk past?
I have seen, yeah. Well, on the 6th of February, which was the kind of anniversary of the Representation of the People Act, there was a big reception in Parliament, and Theresa May came and spoke to us,
very good.
which was amazing. And so it's been interesting, but I'm going to miss. I've still got a pass, so I can go in. But the parliamentary finger buns. Now, I am a huge fan of an iced finger bun. I love iced finger buns, and they have them in Parliament. They make them fresh, and I'm going to miss them so much.
So could you go to the what access were you allowed through the I'm wondering over the so where could you go? Were you barred from certain places? Are they quite
yeah, because I was actually employed by the University of Lincoln, so I was technically a contractor, which means that I couldn't, like, in theory, I couldn't sit and eat in the canteens.
right.
Between the hours of 12 and 2.
Right. They have such bizarre rituals in there, don't they?
Yeah, but like just being able to kind of go to the libraries, that was amazing.
Sure.
And go to the archives, and I made like a board game that's being sent out free as part of a big thing that they're doing, and helped with the school's workshop, and kind of just threw my energy into that.
You've made a board game as well.
Yeah.
You don't stop, do you? This is amazing. So what's the board game about?
Well, the book is about suffrage. It's all a very suffrage issue. Of course it is. But basically, Parliament do this thing called it's just a plug now. It's called a thing called equalities, as in TEAS, equalities, and which is people can kind of apply, set up an equality. They're going to have an equality, and they'll get this pack in the post, which has got loads of stuff in it and like questions and things. And then they were saying, what could we do? And I said, well, you should do a board game, like a tablecloth board game that's like the history of votes for women in Parliament, so from 1866 to 1928. So the first petition to final, women get the vote on the same terms as men. So that whole 62-year period.
Fantastic.
And they said yes. And so it actually happened. There was a designer and everything, and it exists now. It is a thing. And if you sign up for an equality, you get a free one of these in the post. How bonkers is that?
Fantastic. So, and where, just to remind people again, where do they need to sign up to get that from?
Okay. So if you look up equalities, so EQUALITEAS, equalities. Yeah. Put that in with Parliament or something, and then it'll come up and you'll see.
Brilliant.
That was super. So whoever thought that would happen? I know. And doing an exhibition and all that stuff. So it's been amazing.
You'll be designing theme parks next, and a log flume. There's no stopping you. And so I do like the fact that the finger bungs were the best thing in Parliament. What was just one weird fact from being in the Houses of Parliament that you found out, or one strange oddity? What was it? Okay,
there's a in one of the portraits. There's a load of things called the Armada paintings that were all redone in like quite recently or within the past 20 years. And they were all painted to be like almost exactly as the weather conditions in 1680s or whatever the Armada was, and it's all very painstaking. But the person who paid for this was an American guy who paid for these things to be redone. And in the final picture of all this set of the Armada paintings, there's he's in the picture on a white horse, with his dog Oliver next to him. His dog Oliver is a Labradoodle. Right. There was no such breed in Tudor times, and this painting is now up on the walls. You can barely see it, although if you know to look for it, you can kind of find bits online. Yeah. But the Tudor Labradoodle is something that pleases me greatly, because if you didn't know about that, you get that down and go, what on earth is that dog supposed to be? Because everything is so painstakingly recreated to the exact kind of conditions. So Oliver the Tudor Labradoodle, fact fans. Fantastic. So that's worth a look, because it's there. It is there. Sounds like a conspiracy. It needs to be investigated, that's for sure. So it's like, and and I'll quickly get in as well. Many congratulations. You got married as well. So I know it was 2 years ago, but we haven't caught up for ages. So I'm getting that in now to say congratulations. And also, one question I always like to ask, sort of my big final question, is who do you think should be on this show? Who do you think I should get to come on Funny Peculiar? I think you should definitely get Bob Sinfield
Mr. Bob Sinfield. I'll get into
on. I think you should get Luke Meredith on.
right.
He's excellent.
And what does he do? Is he a character
he
comedian?
he does like variety. He sings. He does.
Right.
He's excellent. Brilliant all-rounder. Yeah, you should get him on. You should get Don Juan. She's a fantastic drag king.
Oh, right, yes. Now I'm
brilliant.
still trying to get hold of... Oh, right, Don Juan.
Don Juan, yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really fab. So those three for sure.
Brilliant.
If you're looking for kind of variety people, is that what you're looking for?
That's fine. That's brilliant. That's more than
Variety and
enough.
cabaret.
No, that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. So, but listen, thank you very much again, Dr. Naomi Paxton. And
A far-ranging chat from magic to Romanian
I
puppetry
know,
to suffragettes.
Absolutely. Well, and I tell you what, I think this. I need at least another 3 episodes to even encounter more stuff you've been doing. And we've got board games. I don't know. By the time we get back to you, who knows? But anyway, listen. Thank you once again for coming on the show.
You, hurrah! And hope to see you in person soon.
Yes, and we will sort that out.
You've been listening to Funny Peculiar. Tune in next week. More great guests.
So a big thank you again to Naomi for coming on the show. I think you'll agree that was just a brilliant interview, and we covered so much, and she was a joy to chat to. I think I better get her back on one day. And again, congratulations to Naomi on getting married, and that was to Catherine earlier in the year. So that was wonderful. And again, the shout outs on the website www.naomipaxton.co.uk, and then on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Put her name in, you'll find it. Do follow her, do track her down, and hopefully you'll get to see her perform the wonderful Ada Camp. Listen, thank you for coming on the show, Naomi. That was brilliant. And thank you for downloading and sharing, because without you, I can't do this show. You're very important, because I keep looking for the great acts, and I think I've got some brilliant ones coming up soon. But keep listening and keep it funny peculiar.